Glad to see you made it back. When we last left off, the issue of how you got established a paternity had been decided, and now the real question becomes, okay, so now I'm a parent, what does that mean? Well, when a child is born, every parent has certain rights and certain obligations. Let's start with the rights first. A parent has the right in the state of Kentucky to request joint custody. The law in Kentucky is a judge must consider giving joint custody if it's requested and have a reason not to award joint custody. So, if a birth father requests joint custody, the court has to consider awarding it to him. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what does joint custody mean? The simple answer to that is, it's whatever a judge determines it to mean. It can be as much as a week with one parent, a week with another. It can be mostly with one parent and the other parent gets equal say on things such as medical decisions or where the child goes to school. No situation is the same, and the judge has the ability to adjust joint custody depending upon what the judge determines to be the best interest of the child. Now, if a parent doesn't request joint custody or a judge determines that it's not appropriate in a particular case, every parent still has the right to visitation with the child. Now, the factors in determining the visitation are the age of the child, the work schedule of the parents, even the geographical distance the parents live apart. The theory being the younger child spends most of the time with the mother when the child's a baby. If the parents live far apart, we have fewer visitations, but maybe longer periods of time. If they have work schedules where one works nights, one works day, we adjust the visitation to fit the schedules because we want the parents working. We want the parents to be able to see their children. Now, oftentimes the question gets asked, well, I don't like the father or the mother, or I don't like what the father or the mother's doing, or even situations where there's violence between the parents and they say, I don't want that other person to visit the child at all. Well, get over that thought. The law is only the child is considered. The fact that the parents don't get along, the court can work around that. And it's usually worked around by either having a third party pick up the child and another one come drop off the child, or it can be a situation where the visitation is supervised. The only thing that I'm aware of that will stop a parent's visitation are acts of neglect, violence, or abuse towards that particular child or another child. The reason I tell you this is you should try to work with the other side so that the parent can have some form of visitation. It's good for the child, and believe me, the judge will appreciate people who come before him who are at least trying to do the right things. Now, let's move on to the obligations of a parent. Most of the obligations are financial. A parent may owe child support, medical expenses, and daycare expenses. Now, the question usually then is, well, when does that obligation start? When does it end? And how much do I have to pay? The obligation starts from the moment the child is born. In the previous tape we talked about it might take a year to establish paternity. If at the end of the year the judge says, yes, you're the father, the child, all the financial obligations will go back to date of birth, which means the parents will owe back child support, current child support, and future child support. How long it lasts, the answer is until the child turns 18, or if the child is a full-time high school student, in Kentucky you can request to continue the child support until the child's 19th birthday. Then the big question, how much do I have to pay? Well, The answer is it depends. The depends is, it used to be every judge could set child support in every case at whatever figure he or she wanted. And you ended up with cases where two people making the same amount of money for the same amount of children paid wildly different amounts of child support. Our state legislature said that's not fair, so we now have a child support chart in Kentucky. And the child support chart factors in the mother's income monthly, the father's income monthly, the cost of daycare or childcare, medical expenses, the number of children, and it will give you a number that will be paid for child support. That way, we have some uniformity, and people who make the same amount of money for the same number of children should all be paying the same amount of child support. Oftentimes, a parent will say, well, he or she doesn't have a job. Well, what do they do in that situation? Well, that's a real simple one. The judge's attitude in our state is, get a job. If you don't have one, child support will be based upon minimum wage, and the child support will be ordered based upon that figure. The next question that's often asked is, well, I've got bills. I can't afford to pay child support. When I mentioned earlier how child support was determined, there was no mention of bills. Debts are not a factor in calculating child support. The fact that somebody says, I can't afford child support, the judge says, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but this is what you're going to pay. Now, one of the things that sometimes gets lost is, well, why is it that the father always has to pay? Well, that's not the case. A mother owes the same obligation of child support as a father does. So, depending upon the custody situation, the mother can be ordered to pay child support, the father can be ordered to pay child support, and in certain situations, both of the parents can be ordered to pay child support. Now you'll say, well, why both of them? Well, for particular reasons from time to time, a court will determine that it's not in the best interest of a child that the child live with the mother or the father, and the child may be given to a relative, or in a worst case scenario, the state may take custody of the child. In that situation, both parents have an obligation to pay child support. Now, I would caution anybody that listens to this tape that ever gets ordered to pay child support to always make an effort to pay the full amount ordered. If not, at least pay something. Failure to pay child support is a crime, and it can be a felony depending upon how far behind you are and over what period of time. And my experience is judges in this state are not bashful about jailing people who don't pay child support. They want the children of this state supported. Now, the last and final tape, which you're going to hear in a couple minutes, is going to be what I call the special items, the special things that may pop up along the way after the child is born.